I'm John Kramer. It's not Saturday night, but this is my review of Saturday Night Live this week. And for those of you who watch my channel regularly, you know that I typically post these reviews a few hours after the show airs. But in this case, it's now Monday night, Tuesday morning, and I've waited 48 hours to do this, not because I was sick or because of time constraints or anything like that, but simply because the show was so terrible this week. It took me 2 days to wrap my head around how bad it was. I mean, J-Lo was the most boring host they have had on in years. There was all this talk about Betty White hosting the show, these Facebook groups and everything, and as far as I'm concerned, they could have gotten Betty White and put her in a wheelchair and wheeled her 88-year-old body over the set all night, and she would have been 100 times funnier than J-Lo was. I mean, everything J-Lo did was boring, including the 2 songs she sang. Boring. Now, they opened the show up with a sketch parodying the music video, the We Are the World remake that they just did recently for the victims of Haiti. And, I think they only did this just because they wanted to give J-Lo another opportunity to sing. But the scene was terrible, and you could kind of tell the cast knew it was terrible while they were doing it. And I was just struck by the fact that they didn't open with a political scene, which is what they normally do. And, they've had 2 weeks off. There's 2 weeks of stuff that's been going on that they could have done an opening sketch about. Obama's been fighting with the Republicans and having these sit-down powwows with them over health care. And then, of course, in New York, David Patterson has now been forced to leave the campaign, and he may have to resign. And they've got this character that they do with, do him every week on Weekend Update. So I thought, well, have David Patterson open the show. It's like a match made in heaven. It's perfect. But instead, they open with this stupid music video, and then it just goes downhill from there. J-Lo's monologue was just terrible. Andy Samberg did a good digital short. He always does a good digital short. That and Weekend Update you can pretty much always depend on, and this week was no different. And the other thing that really bothered me about this show was their coverage of the Olympics, because, NBC paid $200 million for the exclusive rights to these games. So you'd think if they were going to parody the coverage of it, they would actually make fun of Bob Costas and his team. And God knows there was enough there to make fun of, with them constantly going off on these travelogues about Canada, land of mystery, like the shrouds of mystery have been pulled aside and the gates of Canada have opened for the first time in 1,000 years. I mean, it's not North Korea, it's Canada. But instead they're doing these pieces about things like dog sledding and introducing them by saying, well, dog sledding is not an Olympic event, but let's go learn about dog sledding, when instead they could have been actually interviewing the athletes and covering the actual events. But instead of making fun of that, Saturday Night Live chose to make fun of the coverage by Univision and ESPN. And I just thought, how lame is that? It's almost as lame as having to bring up the Closet Organizer sketch or commercial parody, which they used several weeks ago to fill time on the show, because obviously they didn't have enough material for the show if they had to bring that up again. And so you have to ask yourself, they've had 2 weeks off. 2 weeks to get this show ready, and they couldn't even come up with enough material to fill it. And I guess you can't blame J-Lo for that.